Okay, it doesn't look like people are any more people are coming. The trickle has slowed, so I think maybe we'll just get started. 5 minutes is a long time to wait in silence. Okay, so in this session we have 2 talks. Again, due to illness, we've had to drop one. First of all, we have Vesna Perisic of the University of Southampton talking about their experiences using e-assessment over the past year or 2. And then a talk by colleagues from the University of Edinburgh, Stephen Hagen and Richard Grathwick, about a new kind of course design using Stack very heavily. Okay, so we will get started. It's my job to play the video, so it's my fault if it goes wrong. We'll go with Vesna's talk first. As I said, we only have 2 fairly short talks in this session, so this session will probably not last the whole hour. Okay.
I am Vesna Perisic from School of Mathematical Sciences at University of Southampton, and this is one of my regular updates and overview of e-assessment provision in our school. In a couple of slides and pics, I will tell our
Just paused it there. It looked like there was sound at the start of this video and then it has cut out. Let me just check.
COVID-19.
Okay, so it cut out for a bit there. Good, sorry. We'll continue.
I would say that feedback and our frustration with feedback was a trigger for increased engagement with the assessment. Probably you will recognize the story if I tell you about frustration that we would have after marking weekly homeworks, spending a lot of time asking and writing down a
Again, it looks like the sound has cut out. Sorry. I'm not sure why. We rewind a bit. Let's see. Could anybody else say if the sound is working for them?
It just seems like we're getting 15 seconds at a time and then it'll stop.
Yeah. Go back to the start. It looks like the problem is with me. Sorry, we'll have a good job. We've got plenty of time in this session. Let me investigate.
Yeah, I mean, Vesna's offering to do it on just live. Maybe that's the best answer.
Yes, Vesna, if you don't mind doing that, that would be very good. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm now unmuted. I need then to share my screen. Okay, let me just open the slides. And now let me, so where is to share the screen? Can you help me? Is it? So where the button share the screen? I don't.
Should be at the very bottom.
Oh, share the screen, green. Yeah, I kind of see it. Yeah. Okay, so host disabled participants screen sharing. So I'm disabled.
Sorry, I thought I already had made you a co-host. You are now a co-host. You should be able to share your screen.
Okay, so what should I do now? Oh, okay. Share. And okay, yeah. Okay, so I don't, this is the very end. Sorry, I need to go at the beginning. Yeah, so this we have heard. So I'm Vesna Perisic, originally from Croatia, now from School of Mathematical Sciences at University of Southampton. And when I gave a couple of times a similar talk, and I was thinking why I'm doing this and how to make it interesting. And I just kind of had this bag close to, and I thought maybe to outline, to kind of go back a bit in the history, a few years back, when kind of we started more engagement with e-assessment. So I'm going then to say where we were with the assessment, what is happening now, and probably where we are going. And I will mention a few references that kind of I found inspiring. But so yeah, so now two, okay. So as also we had, so I do consider that feedback or our frustration with the feedback played important role for our engagement with the assessment. We really got very frustrated with kind of spending hours, especially in year one, in weekly problem sheets, kind of marking, giving feedback to the students, and students would never, or a good number of students would never collect it, and what they would be interesting would be just a mark awarded. So the idea came then to split the questions into more computational, algorithmic one, to employ e-assessment to deal with that, and then at the time that was released in that way to use to work with the students on assessment and feedback on proof-based questions, or dealing with more cognitive tasks, like Bloom is from in the Blumen's taxonomy of the kind of. So yeah, so I thought, again was okay. So here is it's always jumping. So, and kind of thinking about this. How to accommodate, what to do with the assessment. And so the COVID-19, the event that we didn't predict, has happened, and suddenly saw the need for, so we have this urgency to do e-assessment. And what I observed is the time was difficult. However, it is a good, people feel that easily they can experiment, and engagement, enthusiasm, and initiatives in terms of e-assessment was quite great in our school. And the other thing, what I kind of think we gained in this time was this confidence to use the assessment for in summative assessment and beyond year one. So year one basically doesn't count towards degree classification, and that is why the students are, why we are still skeptic, or were skeptic to use the assessment. However, so second year counts, and we now with confidence kind of use e-assessment in a second year. Okay, so how to move up? Went wrong, sorry. Okay, yeah, I don't know. So I thought in a couple of slides now, I'm going to kind of showcase and celebrate all diversity of our e-assessment. And since we are in Newcastle, I decided to start with numbers. And this is basically our last e-assessment project, or the newest contribution in e-assessment that the colleague who is now teaching year 2 engineering module use numbers in his final exam assessment. It is important to emphasize here that a final exam for this module is, or final module mark is 100% final exam, and 50% of that exam were multiple choice questions implemented with numbers. And I think that I use this example as our increased confidence in using e-assessment for in summative assessment. I don't know, let me see. I don't know why I have problems with moving from. Okay. So I again went over. So our serious engagement with the assessment started with Davis when we have developed this calculus driving test that I was talking 4 years ago about in Newcastle. And objective for calculus driving test was to develop a tool that would enable students kind of easier transition to higher education. So in terms that they have opportunity to exercise primarily integration, differentiation, and not forget what they learned in the school, in the college. And so now we are revising. I mean, this is still working fine. However, at the beginning, the students were asked to do this test in a vigilated environment in a lab, and was required 80% to pass on a level of 80%. We thought at that time that the test was doing what was supposed to do, that our students can integrate and differentiate. However, due to COVID, so it was difficult to secure the invigilated environment. So we now still have the same requirement. However, students are doing the test in their own time, and we do have impression that their skills have deteriorated. Maybe there are also different reasons for them, but definitely it was recently in discussion to look back at our calculus driving test. So the other implementation of Davis was in first year engineering module, in second year engineering module, where the modules are typically taken by a big number of students. Like I mentioned this year one module with the 700 students, where with Davis we had semester one test and a part of the final exam. So I here cannot kind of emphasize enough how much support we got from Davis team in UVE, and in particular Riz, and I would like to say thank you, Riz. So now STUCK. I do feel that STUCK is going to become our maybe main, or currently is the dominant assessment system, or there are majority of the projects or bits are written in STUCK, and quite a good number of people kind of engage now with coding, and I think that we develop kind of a good level of understanding of STUCK as a school. So examples are listed here. So we have in foundation year some kind of optional tests in both of the math modules, then linear algebra 1 and 2, covering all kind of topics in linear algebra from complex numbers to matrices and group theory. Multivariate calculus, I also kind of gave a talk about it because that was a particular project where we kind of recruited PhD students to do coding, and there was quite good discussion about that, and that is now running smoothly. Then we have a second year module, vector calculus and a complex variable. So that is one module. First was developed a code for quizzes related to vector calculus, and after that complex variable, as a result of one of these my reports, Richard who is going to from Edinburgh University, who is going to talk after this, kind of got in touch, and he kind of was working together with a colleague who kind of was coding a complex variable bit. So now here the the most recent project is related to partial differential equations, and the people who were on a community meeting, STUCK community meeting in Leoben this year were quite impressed with the response, potential response tree that the author David created, trying to accommodate method marks, because one of the main objectives of our students was, with e-assessment we are not getting method marks, partial marks. And then David played with that and developed a potential response tree of an amazing size, I would say. So now I will have again, I don't know, I think. So where we are going with the assessment, you can see now I have illustrated all this diversity, and where we are going, I have no idea where we are going. I think maybe we don't have any kind of special policy. Everyone is kind of working on this in a way as a hobby or in a spare time, as Blaženka yesterday said. And so now I'm not sure whether we are going to maintain all this diversity or one of the system is going to prevail. I have no idea what's going to happen. So now kind of everyone, the whole e-assessment community is playing with the idea how in authentic way to assess using e-assessment proofs in mathematics. And since I teach analysis in second year that is proof-based, I for myself decided to kind of engage with that task. So here are a few references that kind of just a few, so there are many more, but maybe you may want to have a look at. And then again, so my last thank you for, I didn't expect such kind of distractions, but so you have probably seen that majority of the work I'm talking about, I was mentioning, is done by colleagues. So if you are interested and would like to get in touch with anybody, please do email me at vp@SuttonAC UK. So just VP, not VIP, just VP. Thank you. I cannot hear you, Christian, now. I don't know what is that.
No, I can't either.
Let's see if does that work now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Zoom did something to my audio settings clearly. Right, so thank you very much, Vesna. Thank you for jumping in and doing that talk live, despite the technical difficulties I'm having. So there's time now for people to write questions on the Moodle site if you have any about Vesna's talk. I can't see any there at the moment. So I will ask and try and ignore that I'm the developer of one of the systems you used. Do you have any feelings about the differences between the systems that you've used at Southampton? I think you're probably quite rare in having used so many different systems.
So yeah, so first I think I know, so usually people don't talk to each other, and I know all this because of my role as an exams officer and director of assessment, so I can see kind of what's going on. And I do kind of think that STUCK is considered to be this kind of learning, quite steep learning curve at the beginning, but then that the people are kind of quite interesting. It is kind of more code, kind of coding based, and kind of people kind of challenge themselves and try out. And so with the Davis, we have organized at some point, we kind of just had a collection of the questions for this test, differentiation, integration, and we, the whole group, kind of were sitting together and doing coding. And again, it was kind of not difficult to kind of take control, start this start coding. It was easy. And so I also think I didn't have, so the guy who is using numbers, he is a very busy man in charge of our graduate school. So I didn't have a chat with him. He ignored my email, or I shouldn't say ignored. So he didn't reply to my emails to tell me about his experience. But I do, having in mind how busy he is, I kind of think that it was kind of easy to jump in and create so this kind of summative, I think this is quite big kind of stake. So 50% of the second year final exam was kind of stuck. I kind of was in numbers. I kind of think, so if there is anything that I kind of learned after, so I will kind of let you know. But
thank you. Everybody else is clearly thinking hard about this talk rather than writing questions.
Well, I can ask a question just about. I guess recently it sounds like there's a lot of these quizzes that you've made across the department. Who was behind implementing those new ones? Was it the module lectures themselves?
Oh yeah, so basically it was they were module lecturers. So for everything we're kind of responsible module lecturer. And one thing that I haven't mentioned, I mean, so everyone needed to create some quizzes, and we have a Blackboard as VLE, and we used also this test environment in Blackboard to create kind of different kind of quizzes. I think that these are were kind of easier to start, you know. I was also for analysis kind of. So first is I think it's difficult to see how in a meaningful way ask the question. I mean, there are kind of different things. One is technical, how to implement it, which system to use, and so, and then how to use it that in given environment makes sense. And I started to create questions. In order to prove blah, blah, you need to show, and then give some options with quantifiers, with the students say, oh, that's actually quite difficult. We need to read very carefully. And I did that in Blackboard. And so I kind of do think that kind of analysis should be assessed also kind of proofs in slightly different way. And I have some idea, I have seen some ideas in Leoben, what people are doing in that. But again, it feels, so, you know, diversity is probably through not having a kind of strategy, what we do in terms of assessment. So now that can be seen from the positive or from the negative, depending on, and it does feels like a people's own initiative and kind of hobby, spare time, rather than kind of job. So what again has a pro and contrast.
I see. Yeah, thanks.
Great, well, thank you. I think maybe we'll move on to the next talk now. So thank you again, Vesna. So our next talk is Stephen O'Hagan and Richard Gratwick from Edinburgh, and hopefully I've sorted out my technical problems and can play this video to you. Otherwise, I have another machine connected to Zoom here. You might have noticed there's two of me. We may or may not manage to play this video. I think maybe Stephen can probably play the video from his end as well if it all goes really wrong. So here we go, I'll try.
Hi everyone, I'll present a case study of a course taught at the University of Edinburgh in 2021-22, which was informed by experiences gained during the pandemic and where we attempted to take the best of what we did during lockdown and find a new way of operating. I'll describe the context of the course and some of the ideas that went into its design. I'll then go on to talk about how things panned out in practice, and then touch on some ideas for future modifications to the course. The course in question is called Honours Complex Variables, organised by Richard Gratwick. It's a first course in complex analysis, so covers things like holomorphic functions, singularities, the Cauchy integral theorem, and residue calculus. It's a one semester course, which means there are 11 teaching weeks. Last year there were around 250 students on the course, mainly from year 3 of a 4-year undergraduate degree or a 5-year integrated master's. The course had some classes and some assessment. There were 2 50-minute lectures per week, which I'll say a little bit more about later, and 1 50-minute workshop where students were working in groups of around 15 with 1 tutor per group. In terms of assessment, 25% of the assessment was coursework and 75% was a timed take-home open book exam. The main innovation in this course was the introduction of what we're calling workbooks. Informed by previous work of Richard Gratwick and others at Edinburgh, we created a sequence of Moodle quizzes containing all of the content that we wanted students to learn in this course, essentially using the existing PDF lecture notes in a different format where we were able to pull in multimedia, videos, interactive students to complete. This had the advantage of providing a very clear focal point for students. They knew what was expected of them in the course, but week by week they should be working through these quizzes. You can see here a typical pattern of content within one of these quizzes. We start with a text-based definition of a new concept, then there is a screencast of the lecturer with some examples of that concept, and then the students have an opportunity to answer a question themselves. The benefit of using Stack here is that students can generate multiple exercises to give themselves more practice if they wish. The questions used weren't always computational in nature. Here's an example of a typical question that we used quite a lot throughout the course. Just after students have been presented with a new definition, they're invited to explore whether certain examples are examples or non-examples of the new definition. The whole idea being that the process of working through the course materials becomes much more engaging and less passive. Another example of the course questions that we ask using the power of Stack, and because we're using that.
I'm sorry, I'm going to pause it there. It looks like I'm continuing to have problems. The audio started stuttering there. I think I will ask Stephen, are you able to play that video yourself?
I can give it a go. I don't think I've ever done this before, so that could be fun.
The other option is for me to play it on my other machine. We'll see which of us gets there first, I suppose. I'm sorry, I did test all this. I've tried playing out videos. I don't know what's going on with my laptop today.
Can people see this video from, that's me that's sharing it now, I
Yeah,
think.
I can see it.
I don't know if this is going to work.
A typical question that we used quite a lot throughout the course. Just after students.
Sorry, can people hear that?
I think we're hearing it through your microphone. You might have needed to tick the share audio button when you turned on screen share.
Okay.
presented with a new definition, they're invited to explore whether certain examples are examples or non-examples of the new definition. The whole idea being that the process of working through the course materials becomes much more engaging and less passive. And here's another example of the sorts of questions that we can ask using the full power of Stack. And note as well that because we're using Stack, we can provide these very nicely tailored word solutions to each question. Just thinking about some of the things that make this course a bit distinctive at the University of Edinburgh. Workbooks have been used in other courses. They tend to have been earlier years courses, and so we were really keen to explore how using these interactive workbooks could work in a more advanced course and offer a sort of model for how it would be possible to take a traditional set of PDF lecture notes and convert them into an interactive workbook. Also, precisely because this was a more advanced course, we did not want to give credit for students working through the workbooks. That's usually in other courses the practice, so students typically get credit for working through these interactive workbooks. We felt that by the time students got to third year, they should not need that incentive in order to do what is essentially the core learning of the course. Another key feature of this course is that it was not an online-only course. The greatest use of these workbooks at the University of Edinburgh has been in online-only courses, but we wanted to work out how these interactive workbooks could fit into a more traditional on-campus university course. I said I would talk a bit more about the lectures and what was happening during those. The lectures were forced to be online due to constraints outside our control. So they were not designed to be online, but they were online in the end. And the way they worked was interactive with polling on sort of high-level conceptual questions. So there was no repetition of the content of the workbooks, and I think that's crucial to what we're going to see next, which is that students by and large got the message that they had to be working through the workbooks in order to be progressing through the course. So how did students behave in practice? Well, we can see here a summary of the attempts at quiz questions for the week 1 materials. So for example, just over 200 students attempted the very first question of the very first quiz. That's out of around 250 on the course, remember. And as we progress through the workbook, fewer students are attempting questions towards the end. If we jump to week 5 of the course now, we see the same sort of pattern where engagement with the workbook begins higher and declines as we progress through the workbook. At this sort of midway point of the course, we're seeing that now fewer than 200 students are attempting the quizzes regularly. But when we consider that there's no credit for students completing these courses and compare completion of these workbooks to attendance at lectures and tutorials, engagement with these activities is greater than attendance at lectures and tutorials. By the time we get to week 10, we see that there are still a core of students who are completing these workbooks, still more than half the students starting the workbook, but then the same pattern of tailing off towards the end of the workbook. Here are some thoughts of Richard Gratwick, the course organiser. Two main advantages that he highlights here is that using these workbooks freed up synchronous class time for the lecturer to engage in more conceptual and high-level discussion. And also that he felt having exercises contained within the workbooks and having them in a sort of interactive format encouraged students to do them more than had been the case in the past. And what we learned from the pandemic was that different activities and content within the course are really suited to different media. So for example, sometimes it's appropriate for students to read definitions, and then the use of video is maybe more appropriate for discussing examples and sort of edge cases. And then we come to the live class and we're able to have some peer discussion and really dig into the deeper conceptual ideas. Here's some very positive feedback from one student on the course. There's too much here for you to read just now, but essentially it touches on the various aspects of the course design very positively, and even goes so far as to suggest that all courses in the school should be delivered in this way. Just thinking about the next iteration of this course, next year the lectures will be happening on campus, we hope, which means that it'll be much easier to facilitate group discussion through peer instruction. There was still some fragmentation of resources across different places in the course. So for example, the tutorial questions and problem sheets were separate to the workbooks, and we'd like to try bringing those together so that the students really just have one place to look for everything that's the content within the course, and that hopefully encourages them to do more problems. And also influenced by other positive work that happened during the pandemic at Edinburgh, we'd like to look at supporting and encouraging students to work more effectively in groups and to benefit from the discussion that they can have with their peers. That's all for now. Thanks very much for listening, and please feel free to get in touch with either myself or with Richard if you would like to discuss any of the ideas in this talk.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Thanks again for jumping in to cover my technical issues. I will make sure to reboot my laptop before tomorrow's EAMS. Okay, so that was an interesting talk, a very interesting combination of uses of e-assessment. I see again, no more questions on the Moodle site. Someone did write one about Vesna's talk after the fact. So maybe we will just wait a second to see if anybody has a question about that talk.
I have a question. Can I just ask it?
Yeah.
I was just wondering about the coursework. So it's not assessed, doesn't count towards their mark. Did they have some other coursework that was assessed, or was this the only?
Yeah, so the course was 25% continually assessed. That was through sort of traditional hand-in work,
Right.
so
Okay.
assignments,
Yeah.
and some other. There's what's called a skills component to the course as well. So there was some continuous assessment for that as well. So yeah, there was an element of continuous assessment, but
they didn't feel like this was overloading them, or.
Well, I guess what we're trying, Richard might want to say more about this, but I guess what we were trying to figure out is what do we expect students to be doing, like as they learn the course, and having these workbooks made it very clear what we were expecting students to be doing. You know, that I sometimes wonder if students' ideas of what it means to be reading mathematics don't always, I think, align with our idea of what that means. So, you know, I imagine we would expect to be sitting down with a pen and paper and checking, you know, sort of checking edge cases when there's a new definition, all that sort of stuff. So the design of the workbooks really was to kind of encourage that sort of behavior by making the reading of the notes a bit more active, rather than allowing students to sort of think that they've understood the material when maybe they haven't really tested themselves. I don't know if you wanted to say anything more about that, Richard.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen, and thanks for giving the presentation. So in some sense, there's no new activity here. Most of these stat questions were based on exercises that were buried in the PDF notes of previous versions, which it was, you know, understood that students would attempt to the extent that students attempt anything that has no other incentive attached to it and which is just written down. But as Stephen said, putting them into the interactive workbooks encourage students to attempt them, and therefore these workbooks were always meant to be things that were worked through, ideally in preparation for the lectures, as part of their learning for the course. So given that students would be spending more time now on this preparatory work, I didn't give one of the lectures each week that I was due to. I was timetabled to give 3 50-minute lectures a week, and that was how it was done in previous years, based on the fact that students would hopefully be spending now more time watching the video clips and doing the self-assessed questions. I just said, right, I'm taking one 50-minute lecture out, because that is the time I might have spent doing what was in the video clips. And so, exactly to your point, worrying about overloading students, what they're doing with their time, I just said, I don't need that slot. I'm not going to use it. And I only gave 2 lectures a week of the 3 that I had in the timetable. And that seemed to work fine from everyone's point of view.
Great, thanks.
Okay, we have a question from Gareth Walker asking, do you have a sense of how the outcomes compared between teaching the course the old way and the new, both in terms of results and student feedback?
Results aren't ratified yet. I mean, I've marked the exam, but the marks haven't been finalized yet, but no significant change as far as I can tell. Nothing alarming anyway in either direction. In terms of feedback, almost uniformly positive from students, but with the caveat that is a very small number who responded to our requests from feedback. So it shouldn't be taken to be particularly meaningful or representative, but on the whole, this redevelopment seems to have gone in a direction that is popular with the students who engaged with it. And I've not had complaints that people didn't like it. Stephen, I don't know if you've heard anything else that I haven't, or have anything to add.
Only to sort of back up what you're saying there. I mean, I had some interaction with students on in the tutorials for the course who sort of went out their way to come up and say, like, they really liked the way this course was being run. They found it was very clear. One of them described it as, it was very clear how they could learn complex analysis, like what was being expected of them in the course. They knew they were to go to these workbooks, work through the exercises, and they were confident that everything they needed to learn was going to be there. And then sort of just commenting favourably on the course and saying that they would have liked it if other courses had been run in a similar way, really.
It sounds like a very positive development.
Actually, can I just add one more? I mean, what do you think about the argument, maybe to be devil's advocate, that this is holding their hand too much to learning, and they're maybe discouraging them from becoming more independent learners?
I think that's a valid question. As Richard said before, there wasn't really much new here in terms of material, so everything was pretty much as it had been before. The difference is we were making it, I think, a bit less easy to not engage. Not in any sort of compulsive way, but just by saying, right, here's all the stuff you're expected to do. You can try these problems as many times as you like, because there's some stack involved, so you can regenerate new examples and all that sort of stuff. But and Richard and I talked about this quite a lot. We felt it was important to explain to students what we are expecting of them, or what Richard was expecting of them as the person running the course. And I sometimes wonder if that's not done so explicitly in some university courses. If students are sometimes a bit not all out at sea or anything like that, but just a bit unsure about what's the best way for them to, what they should actually be doing day to day in the course. And I think, so some people might call that hand-holding, I suppose. But
I was being provocative a little bit.
yeah, sure. But I think it was a useful exercise, I think, for us to think through what do we expect the students to be doing, and then trying to design the materials to encourage that behaviour. That's really what we did. Don't know if there's anything else you want to add there, Richard.
Not really, but I mean, I agree with everything you said. And in fact, from my point of view, giving the lectures, I felt the entire opposite, that I was doing less hand-holding, because in previous years, I spent the 3 lectures essentially just regurgitating the lecture notes to some extent, because even though I did say, please read the notes before the lecture, it's pages 11 to 14 for the lecture on Tuesday, it was just a PDF, and I got the impression that students on the whole were not doing that. Therefore, I felt I had to write down definition 4.6, example, blah, 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 which I largely didn't do this year. I was doing more high-level conceptual stuff, trying to make connections between the material. I just gave 2 lectures in the week on the material that week, right? It wasn't actually particularly stuck to each section. And so a little bit more polling, and well, we couldn't do peer instruction because of the logistics, but hopefully that will be possible next year. So certainly in terms of the lecture content, less actual hand-holding in terms of this is what you need to know and this is how you answer the question that will come up in the exam sort of behavior.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, we have a question from Frosina, who says, were there any concerns about academic integrity as the assessments weren't invigilated in either the 25% or the 75% portions of the grade? Is that accurate, and were there any concerns?
Do you want to take that, Richard?
Yeah, I'll comment on that. I mean, just to be clear, in the terms of the assessment this year, this course was not unusual in any sense from the rest of our courses. So the assessment was not something that's worth talking about in terms of this course. So just to clarify the final exam, it was a online timed exam held at 1 o'clock on the 4th of May or whatever it was, and students had 3 hours to complete it and then an hour to upload. So just to clarify the meaning of take-home exam, but it wasn't proctored. We never went down that avenue. We do not really wish to. Are there academic integrity concerns, therefore? Yes. Largely that's on me to write questions that don't allow, Wolfram Alpha for a start. The larger problem we have is collusion, which we see to a limited extent, but not massively. So there are concerns there, not grave ones, I don't think. And certainly I think our hope in Edinburgh is that we will be returning to in-person exams in the future. So should there be problems here at the moment, they are hopefully temporary and will not surface again in the future. Stephen, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Not really. I was gonna, I was just interested to hear what others' experiences of, since we're talking about exams and the past couple of years, what other people's experiences of that have been, if anyone wants to share.
So I could echo what Richard said. So analysis exam was online exam, so where students had 2 hours to complete exam and half an hour to scan and upload. And I would say I did kind of, so the questions written were based on there were no surprises. They were kind of based on the lecture notes, however, tweaked, changed something, so it was not copying from anywhere. And I kind of think that students didn't have opportunity to Google it. And so average exam, I have marked exam quite rigorously, and I haven't spotted any collusions, and the average was about 50% on exam. So that kind of compensates with a better kind of marks on the coursework that was kind of differently designed. And based on the coursework, when I'm already talking, maybe may I ask just one thing, because part of my coursework was a group work, that they work together in their own time. And especially I kind of started doing this in the COVID when I wanted that students are checking up on each other. I kind of thought, you know, they find analysis quite dry and rigorous, and it's compulsory but not appealing to everyone. And I kind of thought it's good that they are in touch with each other, and I kind of said it is to support each other, and I know. And so that is then designed, if they do what I ask them, they get the full marks for that. And the part is also reflective journals, a journal that kind of came from the School of Education, that I have learned actually quite a lot about the students and their struggle and how they do and so. And so I wanted to ask, so what do you mentioned the group work. So what you are intending to do with respect to that, or how? It is not connected with the assessment as directly, but.
So the ideas around here were really based on some work, not last academic year, but the one before, with a colleague who was teaching a second year course, and she introduced assessed group work. The idea there was that students were in a group of 4. And their hand-in work was a hand-in for the group rather than an individual hand-in. Similar sort of, sounds similar to what you're describing. The activity was kind of built around the tutorials for the course. Because the tutorials were happening online in that case, but even when they're not happening online, she wanted to make sure that they had a clear purpose. You know, it was very clear what the point of the tutorial was, how the students were expected to engage with it. And so the purpose of the workshop was for the group to get help with the problems that they had collectively about the next hand-in work. So if you like, the students as a group were collaborating to produce the next piece of hand-in work. They were expected to meet in advance of the tutorial to discuss the problems, and then come armed with all the questions that they had about those problems to the tutorial to ask their tutor. And that worked incredibly well. Attendance at the tutorials was practically 100% for the whole semester, which is unheard of in Edinburgh. I don't know about other places. Students were super engaged all the way through. They had to take turns at being a scribe as well, which means they were the person that wrote the actual hand-in for the group. Yeah, so those are the sort of ideas, and Richard, as the course organizer, we'll discuss kind of exactly which of those ideas might be good to try in complex variables next year.
Thank you. So it was my group work also. There were also kind of previously just problem sheets that students were kind of doing when they needed to submit it, but then they were also doing peer marking. I would kind of give the marking scheme and they would mark the work of somebody else. And so they would kind of get, I wanted them to understand our process of marking, and so they wouldn't be awarded in the, we recorded the mark that they were giving to each other, but they would get full marks for that exercise if they have done it. Because I kind of didn't want, if the students are marking that, they are kind of trading marks with each other. And so I kind of thought that, but it was important to me for them to kind of engage and see how difficult it is to implement marking scheme. Give them also space to, for instance, this bit is 5 marks. Discuss how to distribute these marks within the question. So it would be great to see what you are going, how you are going to.
Great, well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. in this session. Thank you to the speakers, both for your talks and for saving me from my technical issues. Thanks for the good discussion after this talk as well. I think there was one more question for Vesna to answer on the Moodle site later on, if you can.
Yeah,
We're now at the end of the hour. I've just written out a question for the Edinburgh team to think about over the next few days. So we will draw it to a close there, assuming that my computer doesn't fully implode over the course of the next few hours. Tomorrow we will have a session led by Adam Smallwood from Bolster Academy about that system. I think that's going to be a demo of the software, and there might be an opportunity to try it out as well. So that's tomorrow morning's session starting at 9 o'clock UK time, 8 o'clock UTC. Okay, so we'll stop there, and thank you again, everyone, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks a lot.